Forget the missile counts. Forget the headlines. There's one number that tells you where this war ends. 650. I'll explain what it means in a moment, but once you understand it, you'll realize the Pentagon already lost this war before the first Interceptor even launched. I'm Kane Shimatsuka, and I don't analyze conflicts the way cable news does. I look at what governments hide, what procurement reports reveal, and what defense contractors whisper in closed-door meetings. And right now, those whispers are screaming one thing. America just watched its most expensive defensive architecture get dismantled in 3 surgical strikes, and the math behind it is worse than anyone's admitting. Let me walk you through what actually happened in the Persian Gulf, not the sanitized version you're getting from press briefings, but the sequence that defense analysts are studying in horror. Iran executed a kill chain that proves they understand American missile defense better than most senators voting on defense budgets. Step 1. They struck the ANFPS 132 Block 5 early warning radar at the Al Udeid complex in Qatar. This isn't just another radar installation. This is a $1.1 billion system that sees threats from 5,000 kilometers away, the distance from Qatar to western China. This radar is the nervous system of the entire Gulf defense network. It's the first domino, the alarm bell that gives every Patriot battery, every THAAD crew, every Aegis destroyer the precious seconds they need to respond. Iran hit it first, and that wasn't random. That was doctrine. Step 2. The ANTPY-2 forward-based radar at Al Dhafra in the UAE. This is the dedicated THAAD tracking radar, the one that provides the precise targeting data a THAAD launcher physically cannot function without. Without this radar, a THAAD battery doesn't just perform worse, it doesn't perform at all. It cannot acquire targets. It cannot guide interceptors. It becomes a billion-dollar paperweight pointed at the sky. Iran took it out second, methodically blinding the system's eyes before moving to the body. Step 3. The THAAD battery itself. Roughly 95 American soldiers operate a standard THAAD battery. After the radar was gone, after the early warning was destroyed, Iran struck the battery. And at that point, those 95 Americans couldn't fight back because every system they depended on to see, track, and engage incoming threats had already been obliterated in the preceding strikes. Think about what that sequencing reveals. This wasn't opportunistic. This was a systems-level understanding of how American missile defense is layered, and a deliberate plan to collapse those layers in the correct order. That requires intelligence on system locations, understanding of sensor dependencies, and confidence that strikes would land before the architecture could adapt. The kind of operational planning that takes years to develop and test. Now here's where the math turns catastrophic, and this is the number I mentioned at the beginning, 650. That's America's entire THAAD interceptor stockpile across all theaters, all allies, all commitments worldwide. Built over roughly 15 years at a production rate of 40 to 50 rounds per year, at a cost of approximately $12.7 million per interceptor. That's the complete inventory backing every American promise to shoot down every ballistic missile aimed at every ally in every region simultaneously. During the 12-day Israel-Iran war last June, the United States fired over 150 THAAD interceptors. That was 23 to 25% of the entire global stockpile in 12 days defending one country in a conflict that ended with a ceasefire. And how many new THAAD rounds did the United States receive in all of fiscal year 2026? 12. Let me repeat that because it matters. America burned through roughly 150 interceptors in less than 2 weeks last summer. It received 12 replacements in an entire fiscal year. At that production rate, replacing what was consumed in the June war alone takes over 12 years. And that's before you factor in what's being consumed right now. The current conflict is 5 days old. It spans 11 countries. It has already generated more total intercepts in 5 days than the entire June war produced in 12. And a THAAD battery has been physically destroyed, meaning not just the interceptors gone, but the launchers, the radar, the fire control, the complete system that costs between $1 and $1.8 billion and takes years to manufacture and field. But there's a mechanism that makes this math even worse, and this is the part that keeps defense procurement officials awake at night. Iran doesn't send ballistic missiles alone. They mix them with Shahed 136 drones that cost roughly $35,000 each. They arrive in the same salvos, and here's the problem. A radar operator watching a mixed swarm of incoming contacts cannot instantly tell which blip is a $35,000 drone and which is a ballistic missile carrying a warhead that could kill hundreds of people. Classification takes time that a terminal phase engagement might not allow. So the standing order, the only rational standing order, is to engage everything. Every blip gets an interceptor. A PAC-3 MSE costs about $4 million. A THAAD interceptor costs $12.7 million. An SM-6 fired from a destroyer can run $4 to $5 million, and a meaningful percentage of those interceptors are being fired at drones that cost less than a mid-range pickup truck. Iran essentially turned its drone fleet into an invoicing system. Every mixed salvo is a forced purchase order. America and its allies have to buy the engagement because the alternative, guessing wrong and letting a real ballistic missile through, is catastrophically more expensive than the Interceptor. Iran built its entire salvo doctrine around this math, and 5 days in, the invoices are stacking up. The UAE intercepted 645 drones in the first 5 days, 645 individual engagements, each one requiring a missile, each missile drawn from a stockpile that takes years to refill. Lockheed Martin's target for PAC-3 MSE production is 650 units per year by 2027. They're not there yet, and that target number would need to cover replacements for every allied country consuming interceptors simultaneously, not just the UAE. Here's the dimension that extends far beyond the Gulf, and this is where my analysis diverges from the optimistic narratives you're hearing elsewhere. A January 2026 Heritage Foundation report, this is a conservative pro-defense think tank, not some fringe outlet, modeled what happens to U.S. interceptor stockpiles in a sustained high-intensity conflict. Their assessment was blunt. High-end interceptors like SM-3, SM-6, PAC-3 MSE, and THAAD would likely be exhausted within days of sustained combat against a peer adversary, some systems depleted after just 2 to 3 major salvos. The report estimated aggregate U.S. vertical launch system inventories at around 17,000 rounds, which they called insufficient for even one full fleet reload. Peer-side rearming would create multi-week gaps. The Heritage Foundation's conclusion was systemic failure within 30 to 60 days. That report was written about a potential China scenario, Taiwan, the Western Pacific, the conflict every defense planner in the Pentagon has been gaming out since at least 2020, but the stress test is happening now against Iran in the Gulf on day 5, and China is absolutely watching. Every THAAD interceptor expended over the UAE is one that cannot sit in a magazine aboard a destroyer in the South China Sea. Every PAC-3 consumed defending Al-Udeid is a PAC-3 that's not available for the scenario Beijing has been studying for years. The depletion happening in real time right now is not just an Iran problem, it's a global deterrence problem. And it may be the most strategically significant second-order effect of this entire war. The Gulf security architecture, the system of American bases, American radar, American interceptor batteries, and American personnel guarantees that Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, Kuwait, and Bahrain have paid for with basing rights and procurement contracts and strategic alignment for 30 years. That architecture rested on an implicit promise. The promise that American systems could absorb any Iranian strike package and keep functioning. That the layered defense was deep enough that nothing could reach the core. 3 strikes, 5 days. The core took a hit. Trump says the war could last 4 to 5 weeks. Replacing what's already been consumed takes years. Those two timelines do not exist in the same universe. And someone in Washington knows that, even if nobody's saying it on camera yet. This is the math that loses wars, not the dramatic headlines, not the political rhetoric, but the cold arithmetic of production rates versus consumption rates, of stockpile depths versus operational tempo, of costs versus capabilities. Iran understood this math better than America's own defense establishment apparently did. They built a doctrine around exploiting it. And 5 days into this conflict, that doctrine is working exactly as designed. I've spent years analyzing conflicts that conventional wisdom said were impossible, studying weapon systems that official reports claimed were invincible, and tracking strategic vulnerabilities that policymakers preferred to ignore. This is one of those moments where the gap between what's being said publicly and what's happening operationally is so wide that it constitutes a national security threat in itself. The longer we pretend the math works, the deeper the hole gets. And the math stopped working the moment Iran proved they could sequence strikes to collapse $1 billion defensive architecture faster than America can rebuild it. The war isn't over, but the illusion that superior technology alone guarantees victory, that died with the THAAD battery in the Persian Gulf, and the consequences of that death are only beginning to unfold. Let me tell you what happens next, because this is where my analysis diverges completely from the optimistic briefings you're hearing from defense officials. When adversaries watch America's interceptor stockpiles deplete in real time, when they see THAAD batteries destroyed and production rates that can't replace losses, they don't sit quietly and wait for America to rebuild. They test, they probe, they calculate whether this is the moment to move on their own strategic objectives while America's defensive umbrella has holes in it. Russia is watching Ukraine's air defense consume Western interceptors at rates that were supposed to last months, not weeks. China is watching the Pacific Fleet's magazine depths shrink with every engagement in the Middle East. North Korea is watching the arithmetic and doing the same math Iran just proved works. This is the cascading failure scenario that keeps me awake at night, and it's not some distant theoretical possibility anymore. It's the operational reality unfolding right now. Every interceptor fired over the Persian Gulf is one less interceptor available for the next crisis, and there will be a next crisis. There always is. The question is whether America has enough left in the magazine to handle it when it comes. Based on current consumption rates and production timelines, the answer is becoming increasingly clear. And it's not the answer anyone in Washington wants to hear. This is what strategic overextension looks like in the modern era. Not grand invasions or occupation forces, but the quiet arithmetic of depleted stockpiles, exhausted production capacity, and adversaries who learn to exploit the gap between America's commitments and its actual capability to fulfill them simultaneously. The math didn't just fail in the Persian Gulf. The math is failing everywhere America promised it wouldn't. And somebody needs to start saying that out loud before the next war starts and we discover just how empty those magazines really are.